foundation forged through years of shared experiences and unspoken understanding. But lately, a storm had begun to brew, subtle yet insistent, casting shadows over the sunny landscape of his marriage. It began innocuously enough. Lily, his wife of 8 years, started working late at the office. Her evenings stretched longer, punctuated by vague excuses about deadlines and last-minute meetings. Ethan tried to shake off his unease, reasoning that Lily was merely caught up in the pressures of her growing career. After all, her ambitious spirit had been one of the many qualities that had drawn him to her. Yet, these small inconsistencies gnawed at him. He noticed how Lily's phone seemed glued to her hand, her laughter bubbling over during private text exchanges that she quickly dismissed as work stuff. Conversations became clipped, her affection felt rehearsed, and she began leaving traces of a world Ethan wasn't invited into. One evening, as Ethan set the dinner table for two, something they had always enjoyed doing together, he realized he was dining alone again. Lily's text had arrived hours earlier. "Working late, don't wait up." He stared at the words on his screen, his appetite evaporating. For weeks, Ethan struggled with the thoughts circling his mind. He didn't want to be the husband who doubted his wife without reason, but as the small incidents piled up, he couldn't ignore them anymore. The turning point came on a quiet Thursday night. Ethan was about to turn in when he saw Lily's work bag on the kitchen counter. She had forgotten it in her rush that morning. On impulse, he picked it up, intending to leave it by the front door for her. But as he adjusted the strap, a receipt fluttered out and landed on the floor. Curiosity overtook him as he bent down to pick it up. The receipt wasn't for office supplies or a coffee run. It was from a high-end boutique, listing an extravagant purchase. Lingerie Ethan had never seen. He froze, his mind racing through possibilities, each darker than the last. The following night, his suspicions came to a head. Lily claimed she was staying late for a project with her coworker, Ryan Clark, someone she'd mentioned in passing before. Ryan had always been described as helpful and a great mentor, but Ethan's intuition screamed otherwise. He decided to follow her. Ethan parked a safe distance from Lily's office, watching as the lights inside flickered off. Soon, he spotted her walking to her car, not alone, but with Ryan. They laughed and talked, their heads too close for mere colleagues. Ethan trailed them as they drove, his heart pounding in his chest like a war drum. It wasn't a restaurant they arrived at or a quiet bar, but his own driveway. Ethan's pulse quickened as he watched Lily and Ryan exit the car, their body language intimate in ways that betrayed the vows they had exchanged. Ethan's world tilted as he sat frozen, watching the scene unfold before him. Ryan reached out, brushing Lily's hair aside, and whispered something that made her laugh, a sound Ethan had once considered his to cherish. At that moment, the cracks in Ethan's world turned into a chasm. He stepped out of his car, ready to confront the betrayal head-on, not realizing that the night held even more revelations than he could imagine. The cold night air hit Ethan like a slap as he approached the driveway, his footsteps steady despite the chaos roaring in his mind. Lily and Ryan stood just a few feet away, their quiet laughter cutting through the silence like jagged glass. They hadn't noticed him yet. "Lily," Ethan called, his voice sharp and unwavering. The sound startled them both. Lily turned, her expression shifting from surprise to guilt in an instant, while Ryan instinctively stepped back, his confidence faltering under Ethan's gaze. "Ethan," Lily began, her voice trembling, "what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," Ethan replied, his tone low but brimming with unspoken accusation. His eyes shifted to Ryan, who looked as though he was considering running. "But maybe Ryan can explain it better." Ryan raised his hands defensively, his voice oozing false calm. "Ethan, man, this isn't what it looks like. We were just—" "Don't." Ethan cut him off, his voice like a blade. Spare me the cliché. Lily stepped forward, her arms crossed defensively. Ethan, it's not what you think. Ryan and I were just... Just what? Ethan interrupted, his composure slipping. You're standing in our driveway, laughing, with this man like you haven't lied to my face for weeks. So tell me, Lily, what exactly were you just doing? For a moment, the only sound was the soft rustling of leaves in the breeze. Lily's mouth opened, then closed, as if the words wouldn't come. Ethan knew that hesitation too well. It was the pause of someone crafting a lie. Ryan took the opportunity to speak, his voice firm but carefully measured. Look, Ethan, I think we all need to take a step back and calm down. This doesn't have to get messy. Ethan's laugh was hollow, devoid of humor. Messy? You think this is about keeping things neat? You're standing in my driveway, Ryan. You've already made it messy. Lily finally found her voice, though it cracked under the weight of her words. Ethan, please, I didn't mean for you to find out like this. Find out what? Ethan demanded, his eyes locked onto hers. That you've been sneaking around? Lying about late nights at work? Laughing behind my back with him? Lily flinched, but there was something defiant in her gaze. I've been unhappy, Ethan, she said quietly. For a long time. The words hit Ethan harder than he expected. Unhappy, he echoed, his voice quieter now, laced with disbelief. And your solution was this? To throw away everything we've built together? Lily looked away, her jaw tightening. I wasn't supposed to be like this. But I needed to feel alive again. Alive? Ethan repeated, the word tasting bitter in his mouth. Is that what you call this? Sneaking around, betraying the person who stood by you through everything? That's what makes you feel alive? Ryan shifted uncomfortably, looking like he wanted to disappear. Maybe I should go. No. Ethan turned to him, his voice steady again. You're part of this. You don't get to walk away without facing the consequences. Ryan raised his hands again, stepping back. I didn't know it was like this, man. I thought... You thought what? Ethan snapped. That you could just step into someone else's marriage without repercussions? Lily's voice rose, shaky but insistent. This isn't just Ryan's fault. I made my choices too, Ethan. That much is clear, Ethan replied coldly, his eyes narrowing. But why? Why throw away our life for him? Lily hesitated, then exhaled sharply. Because you stopped seeing me, Ethan. You stopped caring about what I wanted, about who I am. Everything became about work, about your plans. I felt invisible. Ethan's anger faltered, replaced by a deep, gnawing ache. He wanted to shout, to argue, to refute her claims, but deep down, her words resonated with a truth he hadn't dared to acknowledge. And instead of talking to me, instead of trying to fix what was broken, you decided to break it even more? He asked, his voice raw. Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. I didn't know how to tell you, Ethan, and then it just happened. Ethan stood there, his breath shallow, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This wasn't just about the betrayal he'd witnessed tonight. It was about the slow erosion of something he'd thought was unshakable. Finally, he stepped back, his voice steady once more. I deserve better than this, he said simply, and I won't stand here and let you drag me through your excuses. He turned and walked away, leaving Lily and Ryan in stunned silence. As he reached his car, Ethan realized that the life he thought he knew had ended in that driveway, but somewhere in the wreckage, a new beginning awaited him. Ethan sat in his car, the engine idling as his hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. The confrontation in the driveway played on a loop in his mind, each word echoing with devastating clarity. Lily's admission of unhappiness gnawed at him. How had he missed the signs? Or worse, had he seen them and ignored them, convinced that their marriage was strong enough to withstand unspoken tensions? He drove aimlessly through their quiet suburban streets, the familiar landscape now alien under the heavy fog of betrayal. The neighborhood park, where he and Lily had shared countless evenings walking hand in hand, now seemed like a mockery of what they once had. The laughter of children playing on the swings reminded him of the life they had dreamed of but never pursued. When Ethan finally pulled into the parking lot of a local diner, he realized he hadn't eaten all day. The warm glow of neon lights promised comfort, but the heaviness in his chest told him that nothing could fill the void left by Lily's confession. He slid into a booth by the window and ordered a black coffee, ignoring the questioning glance of the waitress. As he stared out at the darkened street, memories surged unbidden, filling the silence. He thought of the day he met Lily, her laughter lighting up the room as she recounted a story to mutual friends. It had been so easy to love her then, her warmth and vivacity drawing him in like a moth to a flame. He had believed they shared something unshakable, a bond built on trust and shared dreams. But now Ethan wondered if he had built their marriage on a foundation of illusions. Had Lily always felt this way? Or was it something that had crept in gradually, like rot beneath the surface, unnoticed until it was too late? His coffee arrived, and he wrapped his hands around the warm cup, seeking solace. He thought about her words in the driveway, her claim that he had stopped seeing her, stopped caring. Was it true? Ethan prided himself on being attentive and caring, but had he lost sight of Lily in the routine of life? It wasn't just her betrayal that stung. It was the realization that, somewhere along the way, they had both let the cracks grow wider. While Lily had sought solace in Ryan, Ethan had buried himself in work, convincing himself that providing a stable life was enough. "Refill?" the waitress asked, breaking into his thoughts. Ethan nodded absently, and she poured more coffee into his cup, her kind smile reminding him of the small unspoken acts of connection that he and Lily had once shared. As the hours dragged on, Ethan pulled out his phone, scrolling aimlessly through his photos. Images of vacations, anniversaries, and quiet nights at home stared back at him, mocking the life he thought he had. He paused on a picture of their last trip to the mountains. Lily's arm wrapped around his. Had it all been a facade? His thoughts were interrupted by the vibration of his phone. A message from his friend and co-worker, David, popped up. "Everything okay? You seemed off this week. Let's grab a drink soon." Ethan hesitated before replying, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. He had always been the friend who listened, the one others leaned on. Now the idea of revealing his own pain felt both foreign and necessary. "Not great. Lily and I are having problems. Let's talk soon." The act of typing the words felt like a small release, as though admitting the truth out loud gave him permission to face it. By the time Ethan left the diner, the night had deepened, the streets bathed in the eerie glow of streetlights. He drove home slowly, his mind still racing, but when he reached his house, he couldn't bring himself to go inside. Instead, he sat in his car, staring at the warm lights glowing through the windows. Inside, he knew Lily was likely waiting, the tension of their earlier confrontation hanging heavy in the air. But Ethan couldn't face her yet. Instead, he pulled out his phone and searched for hotels nearby. A few minutes later, he checked into a modest room across town, the anonymity of the space offering a strange sense of peace. In the silence of the room, Ethan allowed himself to feel the full weight of the evening. He thought about what he wanted, what he needed. For years, he had poured himself into their marriage, believing it was unassailable. But now he had to confront the possibility that walking away might be the only way to save himself. As the hours stretched into early morning, Ethan began to piece together a plan. He needed clarity, space to understand what had gone wrong, and whether there was anything left to salvage. He needed to talk to someone, perhaps a counselor, or even just a trusted friend who could offer perspective. Above all, Ethan knew he needed to confront the truth, not just about Lily's betrayal, but about his own role in their unraveling. Only then could he decide what came next. For the first time in weeks, Ethan felt a flicker of resolve. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew he couldn't stay suspended in this moment forever. As he lay on the stiff hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, Ethan allowed a single thought to anchor him. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of something new. Ethan woke to the pale light of dawn creeping through the hotel curtains. The sterile room smelled faintly of bleach and cheap coffee, but its unfamiliarity brought a surprising sense of comfort. For the first time in days, he felt as though he could think clearly. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes and sat up, his thoughts drifting back to the confrontation in the driveway and the weight of Lily's words. Her betrayal had been shocking, but what haunted him more was the reflection it cast on their marriage. Had he failed her? Or had she failed them both by choosing deception over honesty? Ethan reached for his phone, scrolling through missed calls and texts. Lily's name appeared at the top of the list, accompanied by messages that ranged from hesitant apologies to desperate pleas for him to come home. He set the phone down without replying, knowing he wasn't ready to face her yet. Instead, he dressed quickly and headed for a nearby park. The crisp morning air filled his lungs as he walked along the tree-lined paths, his thoughts swirling. This place reminded him of simpler times. Saturday mornings when he and Lily would jog together before stopping for coffee at their favorite cafe. Back then, their laughter had come easily, their silences comfortable. Ethan sat on a bench overlooking a small pond, the still water reflecting the sky above. He took out a notebook he'd brought from home and began to write, something he hadn't done in years. At first, the words came hesitantly, like pulling thorns from his skin, but soon they flowed freely. How did we get here? Was it all my fault? Was I blind to her unhappiness, or did I choose not to see it? I can't ignore the truth anymore. Somewhere along the way we stopped trying. But why didn't she talk to me? Why did she let someone else into her life instead of fighting for what we had? The act of writing brought a strange kind of clarity. Ethan realized he couldn't shoulder the blame entirely, nor could he absolve Lily of her choices. Their marriage had faltered because of both of them, but only she had decided to betray their trust. A voice interrupted his thoughts. "Mind if I sit here?" Ethan looked up to see an older man, his weathered face framed by a gray beard, gesturing to the empty space on the bench. Ethan nodded, and the man sat down with a contented sigh. "Beautiful morning," the man said, glancing at Ethan's notebook. "Looks like you've got a lot on your mind." Ethan hesitated, then surprised himself by speaking. Yeah, you could say that. My wife, let's just say things aren't going well." The man nodded knowingly. "Been there. 30 years with my first wife, and it ended in a mess I wouldn't wish on anyone. But you know what I learned?" Ethan looked at him expectantly. "Sometimes you've got to let go of what's broken," the man continued. "You can spend years trying to patch up the pieces, but if the foundation's cracked, it'll never hold." Ethan frowned, unsure if he agreed. "But what if you could fix it? What if you could make it better?" The man shrugged. "Maybe you can, but it takes two people willing to do the work, and trust me, that's rare. Most of the time, one person's already halfway out the door." The words struck a chord, and Ethan realized the truth of them. Lily's actions had shown him where her priorities lay. No amount of effort on his part could fix a relationship she had already chosen to abandon. As the man got up to leave, he patted Ethan's shoulder. "Whatever you decide, just make sure it's what you want, not what someone else expects." Ethan watched him go, feeling a strange sense of gratitude. The encounter had reaffirmed what he already knew. He had to take control of his own life. By the time he returned to the hotel, Ethan had made up his mind to confront Lily again, but this time on his terms. He called David, his closest friend, and asked him to meet at a coffee shop later that day. When they sat down, Ethan didn't hold back. He poured out everything: Lily's late nights, the confrontation in the driveway, her admission of unhappiness. David listened intently, his brow furrowed with concern. "Man, I'm so sorry you're going through this," David said when Ethan finished. "But you can't let her decisions define you. You've got to figure out what you want next, not just for you, but for your future." Ethan nodded. "I know. I don't know where to start." David leaned forward. "Start by protecting yourself. See a lawyer, get your finances in order, and don't let her guilt you into anything. She made her choices. Now it's time for you to make yours." Ethan thanked him, feeling bolstered by his friend's support. As he left the coffee shop, he felt a spark of determination. That evening he returned home. The house was quiet, and Lily was sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes red from crying. "You're back," she said, her voice trembling. "For now," Ethan replied, his tone measured. "But things are going to change, Lily. No more lies, no more excuses. If we're going to talk, it's going to be honest. And if we can't be honest, then there's nothing left to save." Lily's eyes widened, but she nodded. "Okay, I'll tell you everything." Ethan sat down, ready to face whatever came next. For the first time, he felt like he was in control of his future, and he wasn't going to let it slip away again. Ethan sat across from Lily at their kitchen table, a place that had once been the heart of their home. Now it felt like a battleground, the air heavy with tension and unspoken words. He studied her, noting the tear stains on her face, the way her hands trembled as they clutched her coffee mug. She looked small, fragile even, but Ethan forced himself to remember the strength it had taken for her to deceive him. "I want to hear it all," he said, his voice steady but firm. "No more half-truths, no more excuses. I deserve the truth, Lily." Lily hesitated, her gaze dropping to the table. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "When I met Ryan, it started as just someone to talk to. I felt so disconnected from us, Ethan." "From you." Ethan clenched his jaw, the familiar pang of guilt rising in his chest, but he pushed it aside. "Disconnected how?" She exhaled shakily. You were always working, always focused on the future, building a life, planning for what's next. And I felt like I was invisible in the present." Her words hung in the air, cutting deep. Ethan knew he had thrown himself into work, believing that financial stability and a well-planned future would bring them both happiness. But he had failed to see what she needed in the here and now. "It doesn't excuse what you did," he said, his voice hardening. "You could have told me how you felt. We could have worked through it together. Instead, you chose to lie, to betray me. Why?" Tears welled in Lily's eyes. "I didn't know how to talk to you anymore. And Ryan, he made me feel seen. He made me feel like I mattered." The words stung, but they also brought clarity. Ethan realized that their relationship had been eroding long before Ryan entered the picture. The betrayal wasn't the beginning of their downfall. It was the culmination of years of neglect, silence, and misunderstanding. "You had other choices," Ethan said, his voice calmer now. "You could have fought for us instead of running to him." Lily nodded, tears spilling over. "I know. And I hate myself for what I did. But, Ethan, I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was lost, but Now I see that I'm the one who let us get here." Ethan leaned back in his chair, the weight of her confession settling over him. He had come to this conversation hoping for answers, but he realized now that no explanation would ever fully make sense of the choices she had made. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he said finally. "And even if I could, I don't think I could trust you again." Lily sobbed quietly, her head bowed. "I'll do whatever it takes to fix this," she whispered. "But if you can't, I understand." For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. The silence was heavy, punctuated only by the ticking of the clock on the wall. He thought about the life they had built, the memories they had shared, and the pain of losing it all. When he finally spoke, his voice was resolute. "I think we need to let each other go, Lily. We've both made mistakes, and maybe we've grown too far apart to come back together." Lily looked up at him, her face pale. "So, this is it?" Ethan nodded. "It has to be, for both of us. I need to figure out who I am without this marriage, and so do you. We can't keep pretending it will get better when it's already broken." In the days that followed, Ethan began the process of untangling their lives. He met with a lawyer to discuss the division of assets, and started looking for a new place to live. Each step felt like a wound being reopened. But he reminded himself that healing required pain. Friends and family reached out, offering support and encouragement. David became a constant presence, checking in daily and helping Ethan navigate the emotional and logistical challenges of starting over. Lily moved out first, leaving Ethan with the house they had once called home. He stood in the empty living room one evening, staring at the faded outlines of pictures that had hung on the walls. This house had been their dream, but now it felt like a monument to what they had lost. Ethan sold the house a few weeks later, using the proceeds to rent a modest apartment closer to the city. It wasn't the life he had envisioned, but it was his, and for the first time in years he felt like he was living it for himself. Months passed, and the sharp edges of his pain began to dull. He started going to counseling, not to fix his marriage, but to understand himself better. Through the process, he discovered a strength he hadn't realized he possessed. One evening, Ethan sat on the balcony of his apartment, watching the city lights flicker below. He thought about Lily, wondering if she had found the clarity she needed. He wished her well, even as he accepted that their paths would no longer cross. As he sipped his coffee, a sense of peace washed over him. He wasn't fully healed, but he was moving forward, and for the first time in a long time, that was enough.